Wow, so you use this trading app too?
Yes, because it promises guaranteed returns.
Guaranteed returns. Your trading app is authentic, right? Here's the catch. First, they promise guaranteed high returns with a grin. Then trick you to download a fake app and pull you in.
Well said! Well said!
SEBI and NSE advice. Download apps only from the verified apps list on SEBI's investor site. An investor awareness initiative by SEBI and NSE.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it should be.
Good morning, you're watching News 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra. This is Morning Brief at 9, where we bring you all the stories from the world of business, economy and markets. So stay tuned to understand what's going on in the world and with your money. This is Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's bring you all the headlines that we're tracking for you today. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar meets U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Niagara, discusses trade, global developments and Indo-Pacific cooperation on G7 sidelines. Russian President Vladimir Putin to visit New Delhi on December 5th for Russia-India Forum as Moscow and New Delhi reaffirm strategic partnership amid global tensions. India's retail inflation drops to record low of just 0.25 percentage point in October as GST cuts and easing food prices drive broad-based decline across states. Meanwhile, gold prices jumped 2,000 rupees to 1,27,900 rupees per 10 grams amid firm global cues. Silver surges over 5,500 rupees per kg. US Congress finally passes a funding bill to reopen federal agencies, ending a record 43-day shutdown that left hundreds of thousands unpaid and stalled major government operations in America. The White House says President Donald Trump is doubling down on his proposal for direct payments worth $2,000 for Americans financed entirely through revenue from his sweeping global tariffs. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt accuses British public broadcaster BBC of acting as a leftist propaganda machine funded by British taxpayers over a documentary that allegedly misrepresented President Trump's remarks. FBI Director Kash Patel announces China will tighten controls on 7 chemical firms to curb fentanyl precursors, a rare concession in the battle to slow drug flows into the United States. And social media platforms begin warning over 1 million Australian teens as new rules force minors to download data, freeze accounts or lose them entirely when the law takes effect on December 10th. A top story this morning coming from overseas. External Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the sidelines of the G7 foreign ministers meeting in Niagara on Wednesday. Jaishankar took to social media platform X while appreciating Rubio's condolences on the loss of lives in the recent blast in New Delhi. The two leaders discussed a wide range of issues, including trade, supply chain and global developments. Jaishankar said they also exchanged views on the ongoing conflict in Ukraine and developments in the Indo-Pacific region. The meeting was one among several high-level diplomatic engagements held by the External Affairs Minister during the G7 Foreign Ministers meeting, highlighting India's active role in global discussions. Meanwhile, the External Affairs Minister also met his Canadian counterpart, Foreign Minister Anita Anand, on the sidelines of the same G7 Foreign Ministers meeting. The two leaders discussed ongoing progress in bilateral cooperation under the India-Canada Roadmap 2025. In a post on X, Jaishankar said he was, and I quote him, delighted to meet Minister Anand, unquote, and congratulated her on hosting the G7 meet. He appreciated the progress made under the new roadmap and expressed optimism about further rebuilding the bilateral partnership. Remember, the India-Canada Roadmap 2025 aims to strengthen cooperation based on shared democratic values, respect for the rule of law, and a commitment to sovereignty and territorial integrity. Meanwhile, Canada has announced a fresh round of sanctions against Russia. Canadian Foreign Minister Anita Anand unveiled the measures on Wednesday during her bilateral meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, where the two discussed the situation in Ukraine. Listen in.
First, we reaffirmed our commitment to Ukraine's long-term prosperity, security, and defense. Canada has made it a priority of our G7 presidency to maintain and strengthen our support for Ukraine at every opportunity. Today, alongside Minister Sybiha, I announced new sanctions against Russia to target those who are financing Putin's illegal war.
Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin is all set to visit New Delhi on December 5th to attend the plenary session of the Russia-India Forum. The visit comes as Moscow and New Delhi continue to strengthen ties despite global tensions over Russia's war in Ukraine. The Kremlin had earlier confirmed that the trip was planned for December. In October, President Putin and Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a phone conversation reaffirming their commitment to deepen what they call a special and privileged strategic partnership. The two leaders discussed cooperation in key sectors, including trade, energy and defense, highlighting the continuity of strong bilateral relations. Remember, India has maintained its stance of strategic autonomy, balancing ties with both Moscow and Washington. And from news on external affairs to home affairs, especially on finance, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman met Saudi Arabia's Minister of Investment Khalid Al Faleh to discuss the bilateral investment treaty between the two nations. The meeting focused on expediting the conclusion of the treaty, which aims to boost two-way foreign direct investment and deepen economic cooperation. Saudi Arabia is India's fifth largest trading partner, while India is the kingdom's second largest. Remember, in FY 2024-25, that's the last financial year, bilateral trade between the two countries stood at $41.88 billion, with Indian exports valued at almost $12 billion and imports stood at over $30 billion. And back home, retail inflation in India has dropped to a record low of just 0.25%. That's 1/4 of a percentage point rise in prices in the month of October, the lowest since the Consumer Price Index series began in the year 2014. The sharp fall comes on the back of reduction in GST rates on nearly 380 mass consumption items and subdued prices of vegetables, fruits and eggs. According to data from the National Statistics Office, food inflation fell to negative 5.02% in October, helped by lower prices of oils, cereal, footwear and transport services. Inflation in rural areas entered negative territory of 0.25%, while urban inflation stood at 0.88%. Kerala recorded the highest inflation at 8.56%, while several states including Assam, Bihar, Delhi and Uttar Pradesh saw deflation. According to economists, the moderation gives the Reserve Bank of India more room to focus on growth, with expectations building for a possible rate cut in the December monetary policy review. Remember, the Reserve Bank's MPC, or the Monetary Policy Committee, meets next from December 3rd to December 5th. And to help exporters cope with rising tariffs and global trade challenges, the government on Wednesday announced a 45,060 crore rupees support package aimed at reducing credit costs and speeding up market diversification. At the heart of the plan is a new export promotion mission worth 25,060 crore rupees over 6 years, which includes interest support and promotion of alternative financing tools such as factoring, collateral support and credit cards for e-commerce exporters. In addition, the cabinet has cleared a credit guarantee scheme for exporters that will provide 100% credit guarantee coverage through the National Credit Guarantee Trustee Company. This will allow lenders to extend additional credit of up to 20,000 crore rupees to eligible exporters, including MSMEs. The move is designed to boost liquidity, ease access to collateral-free loans and strengthen India's push towards its $1 trillion export target. And moving on now, a security scare unfolded on Wednesday after Indigo received a bomb threat message warning of possible attacks at 5 major airports including Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, Chennai as well as Trivandrum. Authorities immediately assessed the threat and the Bomb Threat Assessment Committee at Delhi Airport later classified as non-specific. The message had claimed that the airports would be attacked within 24 hours. In the wake of the blast near Delhi's Red Fort metro station on November 10th, which killed 12 people, security across airports has been stepped up. The Bureau of Civil Aviation Security has ordered full aircraft checks, random baggage screening and strict monitoring of flight operations. Meanwhile, an Air India Express flight from Mumbai to Varanasi carrying over 170 passengers also received a bomb threat. The plane landed safely, all passengers were evacuated and a full security check was carried out before the aircraft was cleared for operations. Gold prices continue to see a sharp surge. In the national capital, the yellow metal surged by 2,000 rupees, reaching a record 1,27,900 rupees per 10 grams on Wednesday. The jump marks a total gain of 3,300 rupees in just 2 sessions, with analysts attributing the rally to firm global trends and optimism over the potential reopening of the US government, which could pave the way for crucial economic data ahead of the Fed Reserve's December meeting. Silver too joined the rally, shooting up by 5,540 rupees a kg to as high as 1,61,300 rupees. Globally, spot gold was trading steadily at around $4,127 per ounce, while spot silver climbed nearly 0.9% to $51.66 per ounce. And it was a blockbuster market debut for Groww's parent company, Billion Brains Garage Ventures, as its shares surged nearly 31% above the issue price on Wednesday. The stock opened at 114 rupees on the BSE, up 14% from its issue price of 100 rupees before rallying to close at 130.94 apiece. The NSE 2 shares listed at 112 rupees and ended nearly 29% higher at 128 rupees and 85 paisa per share. Now, at one point during the session, the stock touched an intraday high of as high as 134 rupees, taking its market valuation to over 79,500 crore rupees on the NSE. Remember, the company's IPO had received an overwhelming response last week, subscribed 17.6 times, rising nearly 3,000 crore rupees from anchor investors alone. Now, founded in 2016, the Bengaluru-based firm has grown into India's largest stockbroker, commanding over 12.6 million active clients and a market share of 26% as of June this year. We will slip into a short break. More stories coming up from across the world on the other side of the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
पता है टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस आपकी फैमिली के लिए कितना जरूरी है? इतना जरूरी है कि भारत सरकार ने इस पे जीएसटी पूरी तरह से हटाकर जीरो कर दिया है। पॉलिसी बाजार पर अब 1 करोड़ का टर्म लाइफ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 400 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
क्वालिटी पे इतना कॉन्फिडेंस, इसीलिए बिरला ओपस एश्योरेंस। 1 साल में पेंट को कुछ भी हुआ तो पेंटिंग वापस करके देंगे। रजिस्टर करो birlaopus.com पर।
भाई साहब, आपने भारत कनेक्ट का नाम सुना है?
एक और सोशल मीडिया ऐप।
सोशल मीडिया ऐप नहीं, वो 700 से ज्यादा ऐप्स पे बिल पेमेंट्स पॉसिबल बनाते हैं।
बढ़िया है।
आप हमें जानते नहीं पर मानते जरूर हैं। हम हैं भारत कनेक्ट।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
Breaking news, major disruption is expected this week.
Yes, disruption confirmed. That's me. Relax. No scams. Just my brand new show, News Cosmic with Cyrus.
You're watching News 9. This is Morning Brief at 9. Let's shift focus now to stories from around the world. Let's begin, as always, with the US. After 43 days, the longest government shutdown in the United States history has finally come to an end. US Congress on Wednesday passed a funding package to reopen federal departments and agencies, ending weeks of political deadlock that left hundreds of thousands of government employees unpaid. The Republican-led House cleared the bill largely along party lines after it passed the Senate earlier in the day. US President Donald Trump is expected to sign the measures soon, restoring pay to more than 1.3 million federal workers and beginning relief to key services like air traffic control and airport security.
We need to get this government open as soon as possible, and I'm going to yield back the remainder of my time so we can do that. The American people demand it and deserve it. My friends, let's get this done. Thank you. I yield back.
On this vote, the yeas are 222, the nays are 209. The bill is passed. The motion is adopted.
The White House said on Wednesday US President Donald Trump is pushing ahead with his proposal to send $2,000 paychecks each to Americans funded directly from revenue generated by his tariff policies. The announcement comes just days after President Trump warned that the U.S. could face an economic and national security setback if the Supreme Court overturns his use of emergency powers to impose broad tariffs on countries around the world.
Trump has talked about sending out $2,000 checks to U.S. citizens. Earlier this year, he also talked about sending a Doge dividend. That didn't materialize. Should U.S. citizens expect a $2,000 proposal? Is the White House committed to making that happen?
The White House is committed to making that happen, yes. And we are currently exploring all legal options to get that done. I don't have a timeline for you or any further details, but I can confirm for you that the President made it clear he wants to make it happen. And so his team of economic advisors are looking into it. And when we have an update, we'll provide one.
Well, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also said on Wednesday that President Donald Trump remains deeply concerned about what he views as the misleading editing of his remarks in a BBC documentary aired last year. Leavitt accused the broadcaster of acting as, and I quote, a leftist propaganda machine, unquote, funded by British taxpayers, adding that the administration considers the matter serious and intentional.
Has made it very clear that this is a leftist propaganda machine that is unfortunately subsidized by British taxpayers, and he thinks that's extremely unfortunate for the great people of the United Kingdom and Great Britain. And I think that the President was deeply concerned by the editing, the purposeful and dishonest editing of his speech that was so clearly fake news. As you know, the President's external legal counsel has filed a lawsuit against the BBC. We expect that to continue. And whether they apologize or not is up to them.
Meanwhile, FBI Director Kash Patel announced at the White House on Wednesday that China has agreed to curb the flow of fentanyl precursors and place 7 chemical companies under tighter control. Patel said the breakthrough follows his visit to Beijing last week, a trip that stemmed directly from President Donald Trump's recent summit with Chinese President Xi Jinping in South Korea.
While at Ministry of Public Security headquarters, I met with my counterpart at MPS, where the Chinese government agreed on a plan to stop fentanyl precursors. What does that mean? The People's Republic of China has fully designated and listed all 13 precursors utilized to make fentanyl. Furthermore, they have agreed to control 7 chemical subsidiaries that are also utilized to produce this lethal drug.
And America's Atlanta Federal Reserve President Raphael Bostic has announced he will retire at the end of his current term on February 28, 2026. Bostic, the first black and openly gay official to lead one of the U.S. Fed's 12 regional banks, is stepping down earlier than expected at a time when President Donald Trump is pushing for greater influence over the central bank. Take a look.
Atlanta Federal Reserve President Raphael Bostic said on Wednesday that he will retire at the end of his term in February. The first black and openly gay person to lead one of the Fed's 12 regional banks is leaving unexpectedly amid a push by President Donald Trump for more influence over the U.S. central bank. Trump does not select the presidents of the regional Fed banks, but the appointments must be approved by the central bank's board of governors, which the U.S. president is trying to reshape. Trump is attempting to fire Fed Governor Lisa Cook, and his Treasury Secretary is vetting candidates to replace Fed Chair Jerome Powell when his term ends next spring. Kevin Nicholson, Global Fixed Income Chief Investment Officer at Riverfront Investment Group, says he isn't concerned about a long-term politicization of the organization.
I think at the end of the day, most of the folks at the Fed wants the Fed to remain independent. So regardless, I think the institution will win out in the long run. That, the true economists that are at the Fed, they're going to want to, continue to have that independence.
Trump has railed against Jerome Powell and says the Fed is being too cautious and slow in cutting rates. Bostic said on Wednesday that he believes labor market conditions do not warrant another interest rate reduction, as inflation remains too high. All 3 Fed governors appointed by Trump have explicitly backed further rate cuts, with calls for especially steep reductions from Stephen Myron, who was previously an economic advisor in the Trump administration. A search committee will be formed to select Bostic's replacement.
Shares of American chipmaker AMD jumped 7% on Wednesday after the company unveiled an aggressive target of $100 billion in annual data center revenue, signaling its push to take market share in the fast-growing AI chip business long dominated by NVIDIA. More details in this report.
Shares of AMD rose as much as 9% Wednesday morning after the chipmaker unveiled a bold $100 billion annual data center revenue target. AMD plans to claim a larger slice of the booming artificial intelligence market dominated by NVIDIA. The company was set to add about $30 billion to its market value if the gains hold, a day after it laid out its 3 to 5 year goals, such as more than tripling its earnings at its first Analyst Day in 3 years. AMD CEO Lisa Su told analysts that the market for data center chips could swell to $1 trillion by 2030. The growth highlights how the scramble for advanced AI has set off an infrastructure race and record spending by U.S. tech giants. Several analysts say AMD's targets are attainable, citing major tie-ups with OpenAI and Oracle that could generate tens of billions of dollars in sales, and hints of ongoing talks with other top hyperscalers. Larger rival NVIDIA gave a far more bullish estimate of $3 trillion to $4 trillion in AI infrastructure spending by the end of the decade. AMD shares have doubled so far this year.
Staying in the world of AI, Taiwan's Foxconn issued a bullish forecast for AI demand on Wednesday, saying artificial intelligence will be a major driver of its 2026 growth. The company also teased a major announcement coming next week alongside OpenAI. Take a look.
Foxconn posted a forecast-beating 17% rise in Q3 profit Wednesday. It was fueled by continued strength in demand for AI servers that it also expects to drive growth next year. The Taiwanese firm is the world's largest contract electronics maker and supplies US majors like Apple and NVIDIA. It said third quarter net profit hit $1.89 billion. Looking ahead, Foxconn feels bullish and said it should see year-on-year revenue growth in Q4. It expects AI server revenue to increase quarter-on-quarter. And for its full-year revenue, it forecasts significant year-on-year growth, in line with its earlier projections. The firm also teased an announcement next week with ChatGPT maker OpenAI, though it didn't provide details. Foxconn shares have surged 36% so far this year. Its shares closed up 1.8% on Wednesday ahead of the earnings release.
And moving on now, Australia is preparing to enforce its world-first ban on children under 16 using social media. Platforms will begin messaging over 1 million teen accounts, giving them a choice to download their data, freeze profiles, or lose them entirely when the ban takes effect on December 10th. Here's what we know so far.
Australian teenagers are set to lose their social media accounts, with a ban on young users set to kick in from December 10th. Over the coming days, online platforms like TikTok, Snapchat, Meta, and Instagram will notify more than 1 million teen account holders in the country. Users under the age of 16 must choose an option: download data, freeze their profiles, or lose everything under the world-first ban on kids using social media. Based on information from insiders, the big platforms plan to deactivate accounts for users under the age of 16. Australia's other 20 million social media users should face no big changes. The move puts the nation out front in shielding young people from online risks. Earlier this year, platforms had warned of total chaos, fearing that they could lose users and face $32 million fines for breaking the rules. They said required age checks would mean constant logins, invade privacy, and often be wrong or easy to dodge. But now, firms will use existing software that guesses ages from user habits. Instead of asking for birth dates all the time, they will generally only push people to special age check apps if someone complains about being blocked by mistake. The setup might hit snags at first. Age check apps which are being deployed at scale for the first time can make mistakes. La Trobe University AI professor Deswin Da Silva explains.
One of the challenges with age verification also was this band between 15, 16, 17. How do you distinguish 15 from 16 and 17? So a lot of the technological methods of age verification will fail in that narrow band. And there might be false positives where certain individuals who are over 16, slightly over 16, will be banned from these platforms because their content was classified as relevant to an under 16 sort of target demographic. It's probably going to be service distortion, service failure for a couple of days or weeks maybe, until the platforms figure this out. And we'll see a lot of articles on media and maybe even on social media itself of false positives.
Meta, Snapchat, TikTok, and Google declined to comment. The law states that such platforms must take, quote, reasonable steps to block minors. If the rollout goes smoothly, it could guide the world in cutting kids' exposure to harms like bullying or weight issues from screens. The UK and France added age gates for porn earlier this year. Then in November, Denmark said it would ban under 15s from social media.
And before we slip into another break, take a look at all the developments from the world of artificial intelligence. SoftBank's big AI gamble to fresh challenges facing OpenAI. Take a look.
From SoftBank spooking investors to OpenAI landing in hot water, this is AI Weekly. SoftBank's spending for its so-called all-in bet on ChatGPT maker OpenAI and other investments concerned markets. Shares slid by a tenth after the Japanese investment giant sold $5.8 billion of its Nvidia stake. Market watchers saw that as a sign of a growing funding demand. The stock drop came despite second quarter profit doubling, largely thanks to the Sam Altman-led OpenAI's rising valuation. OpenAI was itself in hot water in Germany. A court found it broke the country's copyright laws by reproducing lyrics from songs by best-selling musician Herbert Grönemeyer and others. The case, which was closely watched, was over the US firm's use of lyrics to train its language models. A judge ordered OpenAI to pay damages for the use of copyrighted material without disclosing a figure. Kai Velp is a lawyer for German music rights society Gamer who brought the case.
On
We assume that the legal dispute is not over yet, but that the case will be appealed. But we do hope, of course, that this will also send a signal regarding the legal situation in Europe, that the big technology companies will now also enter into license negotiations.
Foxconn smashed past forecasts with a 17% rise in third quarter profit. The number was driven by continued strength in demand for AI servers. The Taiwanese firm is the world's largest contract electronics maker and supplies heavyweights like Nvidia and Apple. Looking ahead, Foxconn believes the AI boom will help push yet more revenue growth in the fourth quarter. Meta's chief AI scientist plans to leave the social media giant to launch his own startup. That's according to a report in Britain's Financial Times. It said deep learning pioneer Yann LeCun plans to depart for his own startup. It further reported LeCun is in early talks to raise funds for a new venture. And Intel saw its own big departure as the firm's chief technology officer left for OpenAI. Sachin Katti has led the US chipmaker's AI efforts since around the start of the year. OpenAI said Katti will design and build the company's compute infrastructure, which will power its research into artificial general intelligence. Intel said its CEO Lip-Bu Tan would now oversee its AI efforts.
यही मौका है बिजनेस को बढ़ाने का, पर पैसा
अपनी सुपर पावर यूज करने का टाइम आ गया है।
अब टेंशन मत लीजिए, IIFL फाइनेंस से झटपट गोल्ड लोन लीजिए और बिजनेस आगे बढ़ाइए।
आपके जैसे सुपर हीरोज ऐसी छोटी मोटी प्रॉब्लम से थोड़ी ना रुकते हैं, इसीलिए लाइफ जब भी आगे बढ़ने का मौका दे तो अपनी सुपर पावर, अपना गोल्ड यूज करिए और IIFL फाइनेंस से गोल्ड